You're riding down a highway at about 60 miles per hour. The sun's in your eyes. You fail to notice a car that's impatiently waiting to get out onto the highway that you're traveling on. The car begins to pull out directly in front of you. Now, this would be a time for cat-like reflexes, right? But what if I told you there was one other tool in your tool belt that's even more important than a quick reaction time? This week on MCrider, let's talk about all the factors that affect your overall stopping distance. So having a quick reaction time can save you stopping distance when you're out on the road and a bad situation arises. But there's one thing that's even more important, I think, than your reaction time, and that's your anticipation. So good anticipation in the scenario that we showed you earlier is going to allow you to see that car well before they have a chance to pull out in front of you. You're going to know that you're riding into a potential trap that car may pull out in front of you. You're going to pay attention to the light post as you ride by them, knowing that at certain times it's going to put you in a blind spot in relation to that car. You're going to watch the driver to see if they see you, and you're going to watch that front tire to see if it starts rolling and that car may be pulling out in front of you. So good anticipation to me is always more important than your reaction to getting the motorcycle to a stop. So if I had to pick one, reaction time or anticipation, I'm always going to pick the rider with good anticipation as being safer out on the road, because you're always going to react quicker to a situation than you expect than one that catches you by surprise. So having good anticipation or road strategy is a very important part of riding, and probably one of the most important parts of your total stopping distance. So just to prove that thinking distance or your anticipation distance is the most important part of the equation, let's play a little game here. So your job is really simple on this. In a second, you're going to see a screen appear with a bunch of numbers all over the screen. All you have to do is locate the numbers in order. So find the number 1 and say 1 out loud. Find the number 2 and say 2 out loud. Make sure you don't skip any numbers, and let's see how high that you can get into the number count before you run out of time. You'll have 15 seconds to get through this as far as you can. Make sure you don't cheat. Make sure that you're counting the numbers off one at a time, and let's see who can reach the highest number. When we get to the end, we'll have you record the score down in the comments and tell us what score you got, and we'll see if anybody was able to get all the way through the exercise. All right, so you ready to start? Remember, all you have to do is find the 1, say 1 out loud, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just make sure you locate the number before you say it out loud, and let's see who can get the highest score. We'll start in 3, 2, 1. All right, so remember, you've only got 15 seconds to complete this task. Now you're down to 10. Don't let anything distract you. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop. All right, so how'd you do? What was the highest number you reached? Go ahead and pause the video right here and leave a comment below telling us what number you got up to and if you had any particular difficulties with this exercise. Now, I messed with you a little bit. I talked through this, hopefully distracting you some from your task at hand, but I did that for a reason, because I wanted to talk about the importance of distraction while riding. Did you feel like you had enough time to complete this exercise, or could you have used a little bit more? Well, do you realize at 60 miles per hour in 15 seconds, the time I gave you to take this test, you would have traveled a quarter mile's distance, so 1/4 of a mile, or 0.40 kilometers in the amount of time that I gave you to take this test. So distracted driving, you can travel at a pretty good distance, a pretty good clip in just that 15 seconds. But what if I told you there was another secret to this test that I didn't tell you about? Something that if you had known beforehand, you probably would have scored higher. So let's bring our numbers back up and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So here's the numbers as they were when we played the game. There's the 1, the 2, 3, 4, 5 on up. But let's overlay this with a line and see if you notice a pattern. So when we bring this line up, we can begin to see a pattern. All of the odd numbers are on the left side of the screen. All the even numbers are on the right side of the screen. So if we bring up another line, it gets even easier. If we look, the first 8 odd numbers are up in the top left corner. The first 8 even numbers are in the bottom right corner. The next odd 8 numbers are bottom left. And the next 8 even numbers are top right. So if you'd have known that going into it, knowing where to look and when to look there, that you would only had to have scanned 1/4 of the screen rather than the whole thing, you probably would have done a whole lot better on this exercise because you would have had a strategy going into it. Riding is no different. Having a road strategy on the street, knowing where to look and when to look there, is going to give you a huge advantage to the guy that's just riding down the road and looking at the scenery. So having that anticipation or thinking as you're riding, thinking what if that car pulls out, knowing where to look, when to look, all those kinds of things are going to decrease your stopping distance, are going to help you avoid traps out on the road, and make you a much safer rider on the street. So there are a lot of things that affect our stopping distance on the road. You know, the size and weight of your motorcycle, the size and weight of you, the way you apply the brakes, the type of motorcycle you're riding, the road conditions, the temperature, the tires that you've got on your motorcycle, the level of inflation of the tires. Man, there must be hundreds of factors that can affect total stopping distance. But for the purpose of this video, let's break it down into 3 things. And let's say that total stopping distance equals thinking distance plus reaction distance plus braking distance. Of those 3, the one that we have the most control over is thinking distance. That's exactly why a distracted driver out on the road is such a hazard, because they're not thinking about their surroundings, they're not thinking about what they're doing, and when a bad situation does arise for them, they've got to get out of that mode of looking at the phone and back to reality of what's going on around them. And if we as riders are riding distracted or we're not actively thinking about what's going on around us, we're in a similar situation to a distracted driver out on the street. So we've already said that our total stopping distance is equal to the thinking distance, the reaction distance, and the braking distance, but let's break those down and define what each one is more clearly and how you can improve each one of them. So thinking distance is simply being aware of what's going on around you. Looking up the road, you know how the Motorcycle Safety Foundation teaches that 12 seconds, 12 to 20 seconds that you should be looking up the road to know what's coming and what situations you're riding into. Being aware of what traffic around you is doing and potentially what they could be doing and predicting that. Playing that what if game. What if that car pulls out in front of me? What if I am in that car's blind spot and they never saw me at all? All of those things play into a good road strategy, and to me it's one of the most important aspects of being able to get a motorcycle to a stop when you need to. That's anticipating the situation long before it ever arises. The next part of it is reaction distance, and in an emergency stop, that's the one that probably happens the quickest. That's the amount of time it takes for you to recognize a hazard before you actually begin to apply the brakes. So I'm riding down the road and I see that car is going to pull out in front of me. It's that time from when I recognize it to when I can actually begin to apply the brakes. You can improve that for yourself by riding sober. An intoxicated rider is going to have much slower reaction times. A tired rider is going to have a lot slower reaction times as well. So if you're on a long trip, be aware of that. At the end of the day, your reaction time is going to be slower. You can also improve it some with practice. But it's one of those things that some people are going to be a little more gifted at reaction time than others, but it can be improved some with practice as well. But for me, the main things, riding sober, riding well rested, are going to greatly increase your reaction time out on the street. So the third part of the equation is braking distance. So I've recognized the hazard. I reached out to apply the brakes, and now I'm applying the brakes, and that's the distance that it takes to actually get that motorcycle to come to a complete stop. The things that have an effect on that, like we talked about earlier, type and size and weight of the motorcycle, your tires, the inflation levels, the road conditions, the temperatures, all that kind of stuff. But properly applying the brakes is going to have a huge difference in your total stopping distance. A rider who properly applies their brakes is always going to stop a motorcycle faster than a rider who just slams on the brakes. That's even with a rider with ABS. You want to practice good braking techniques, and you want to know how to get a motorcycle to a stop. The time to learn it's not when that car pulls out in front of you. The time to learn it is on a parking lot and in a practice session, so that you know what to expect when you're out on the street. So practice that good braking technique, and the only way you can practice that is getting on a parking lot and practice. You're not practicing when you're riding down the road and going for a ride. You're only practicing when you're practicing. So get out there and train. So some things that can impact our total stopping distance. We mentioned this earlier, playing that what if game. What if that car pulls out in front of me? What if they don't see me? What's my escape route, or do I need to come to a stop? Can I come to a stop? Is the traffic clear behind me, or do I have somebody riding on my bumper? All of those kind of things you need to think about before the situation arises, so that you're in a better position to deal with it when it does arise. The next would be time and space. Just having time and space on the road is a huge factor. I see a lot of riders riding right on the bumper of the car in front of them, not leaving themselves any out if something goes wrong ahead of them. So always fight for and maintain that time and space on the road. You control the distance between you and the vehicle in front of you, and you need to keep that at a distance where you can get the motorcycle to a stop if you need to. The next one is lane position. Put yourself in a position on the road where you can see up the road. Don't rely on that car, that truck in front of you to drive around that piece of rubber that's come off the 18-wheeler. Get your motorcycle in a position where you can see it, and take safety into your own hands, and don't rely on other people around you. The greatest ways you can do that is time and space and using lane position, actively putting that motorcycle where you want it on the road so that you can see the furthest distance up ahead. And if somebody pulls in, cuts off your sight line, it's up to you to regain that sight line and get yourself back in a position where you can see up the road. If you have something to add to the conversation, leave a comment below. But the real conversation on this video is going to take place over on the forums. We've got very active forums here. We have thousands of members who are actively on the forums, and good riders from all over the country that are providing more value than I can provide in a weekly video over on the forums. If you're not a part of the forums and you're not a member here, you're really missing out. There's a lot of good information there. And in addition to the forums, you'll get access to the field guide, where I've got training exercises that you can work on any open parking lot and work on some of the skills that we talk about here on MCrider. You can become a member on YouTube. If you're on your phone, just scroll down. You'll see a button. Click that to become a member, or go to MCrider.com/support, and you can support the channel through Patreon. Either way, you'll get access to the forum and the field guide, and you can join in on the conversation that we're having here on MCrider. It really is the best part of what we do here. So I hope you'll join us there. I'll be looking for you on the forums. If you sign up, make a post and say hi, introduce yourself. We got a lot of good people over on the forums. So until next week, guys, this is Kevin with MCrider, and I'll see you on the road. There are multiple ways to support the channel. You can become a member on YouTube at mcrider.com/member. or support the channel through Patreon at mcrider.com/support. Either way, you'll get full access to the forum and the field guides, which will further the training that we release here on a weekly basis.